He said, at 3 o'clock, I could be playing with my kids. I have a 2 and 4-year-old. Or at 6 o'clock, I can be down on myself and be like, where the hell did the day go? And the difference is, did I open your app in the morning? He said, so I pay because my kids are not going to be 2 and 4 forever. And I want those 3 hours to have those memories. And I was like, wow.
Welcome back to Employer Content Marketing. And one of the big things that I've been talking to people about over the last few weeks is about giving yourself the time to be creative. Creativity sits within us all and sits within our team. So when it comes to us creating employer content and creating strategies to make sure employer branding works as well as it can do, that creativity is really important, and that ability to be strategic is really important. But you need to create the right environment for you to realize that potential or maximize that potential. So I've got just the person to talk to today. Steven, how you doing?
That is a great intro. I hope this is an unusual and a very helpful episode. So I'm doing well. I'm excited to be here.
There's a very good reason why you got you on. Given your background, I love the fact you got these different backgrounds that have kind of clashed together to create this beautiful friction that is what you're working on at the moment. So I'm rather envious of your background as well, actually, given those Hollywood type
There's some
roots.
fun
So
little tidbits in there.
Yeah, maybe we do another episode about the little secrets and tales that you have to tell, but it would be great if you just give a bit of a whistle-stop tour of what got you to this point.
For anyone listening, here is why this is going to be an interesting episode. And if this is not interesting to you, tune out now, go back to your burger, okay? So the thing that Chris and I were talking about is my experience is varied and somewhat possibly unique, which is I was a software engineer working at IBM. I was a Thomas J. Watson scholar. Both my parents were engineers, and I started my career as an engineer. I happened to be in Los Angeles going to University of Southern California and had a bunch of friends in cinema TV at the time that film went digital. And I sat at that intersection of sort of creativity of film and the technical aspect of I knew how to program as a little code monkey. That was a door into film. And that back door I took by first producing computer graphics for movies, visual effects. Notably among them, I produced the digital effects for Independence Day, for which we won the Academy Award. Really? And also worked with Cameron on True Lies, David Fincher on Seven, worked even with Woody Allen and Jim Jarmusch and people that you don't normally associate with visual effects movies. And that got me very interested in film. So I moved away from the keyboard and worked very hard, had a lot of lucky breaks, let us not minimize that, and ended up as an executive vice president at DreamWorks, the DreamWorks lab for Kurtzman Orsi, at 20th Century Fox as a vice president running action franchises largely. So at Fox, among the franchises that I ran, probably the most notable are like the Die Hard franchise, Wolverine, 24, things like that. Yeah. The twist was I hit a moment and I thought, you know what, I'm sitting here in what is from the outside an enviable job. I'm going to turn 40, 50, 60, whatever, 100 years old. I'm going to be the guy making Die Hard 19. Is this really what I'm going to tell my kids about it? Is this the thing where it's like, Daddy's going to work to make Die Hard 12 so you can go to college, right? And I thought, what do I have skills to do other than develop films and budget movies and things like that? And it was really engineering. So I got back into tech. At this point, I've raised about $21 million of venture. So I have some experience with that. I've had one successful exit, which was great. I've had 2 failures, which were more instructive, painful, but really instructive. And in the course of doing that, I think what brought us together and what I hope is helpful for your audience is in running a couple of tech companies in the past 10 years, and that includes the shift to remote, the pandemic where Zoom became a verb, there were a number of lessons that I saw that had been very common in film, not even labeled as lessons in film, but they were novel in other areas. And applying some of those to modern companies was helpful in terms of how does creativity work in a remote or a hybrid or an in-person way? What are the best tools to use there? What are productivity techniques that bring out the best in your team, especially when you're creating something? And in short, I'll say that I don't want us to have a thought that creativity is when you have a paintbrush in your hand or you're chiseling marble or you're designing a building.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Engineering is creative, design is creative. Like creation is the process of bringing something into the world that did not exist the moment before. So it's a broadly applicable term. And I think in our context, it's really about in your company, what are the things you can do to create the novel things that move your company forward? So that's what I'm hoping we get into.
But look, the name of your company, I think that's worth us talking about, because you haven't just chosen any old word. So tell us about the company name and what it stands for.
It's a fun story. And I'll tell you, it's probably a 2 or 3 minute story, but it's a memorable one, which is, so after doing a couple tech companies, one of the things that really stood out for me was in the new world where there's this spectrum of remote work, hybrid work, in-person work, distributed teams, asynchronous, all these terms being thrown around, right? That the quantity and the quality of distractions were just overpowering. And I thought, okay, what are the things that I learned in film that could be applied here? And then I augmented that with reading books by all the smart people. A lot of smart people have written about this. So if you have read Flow by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, the Hungarian psychologist, if you've read Deep Work by Cal, if you've read Near's stuff or James Clear, a lot of smart people have written about this. And I just thought to myself, how could I take the best lessons? Because to be super blunt, there's a lot of commonality between what they teach, right? These concepts are not far and very divergent. So I built a platform that involved all these things. So in the early days, we had a bunch of users, and Laura, my wife, and I, whom I met in yoga, right? We'd been together 10 years. We were going on our honeymoon after getting married, which when you run a small company is an amazing moment because on your honeymoon, no one bugs you to approve the stapler purchase or ask you for the admin password to the AWS account. So we're going there and I was talking to Laura and I said, you know what? I think this is a gift from the universe because I need a name for this company. And I had this is one of those moments of like, how do you bottle creativity and pour it out when you need it, right? I needed creativity to come with the name of this company. And I had every bad idea imaginable. Flow state productivity app 14. Like it was just all about. Yeah. So I told Laura this. I said, would it be cool? Because I think the next 10 days, I'm going to be in a very relaxed state. We'll do some yoga. We'll be meditative. And maybe my unconscious mind, if I can help it bubble up something great, it will do that. But what if on the first day I speak to a couple of our power members of these early versions and ask them, what do you like about it? What feature do you like? So she was like, I'm going to the pool. Enjoy. Have a couple Zooms in the room. I will see you at dinner, my friend. So I spoke to a couple of friends who were in the platform and asked all the dumb questions. What feature do you like?
Dumb questions are good.
Yeah, do you love the timers? So I did this. I had 3 calls, 3 Zooms, and I said, listen, I only want 10 minutes of your time. It's not the end of the world, right? It's not the biggest thing in the world. And the answers were okay. It was like, oh, I love the flow music. Oh, I love the coach, the smart assistant, blah. And the third one, I was going into my wrap up where I'm like, Chris, thank you so much. It's been 8 minutes. I want to respect our time. And he said to me, Steven, you asked the wrong question. And I was like, oh, okay. What was the right question? He's like, you should have asked me, why do I pay you? And I was like,
yeah, okay.
Our service costs like 30 cents a day. Like, I didn't really think that was, but sure. Okay. Why do you pay me? He said, at 3:00, I could be playing with my kids. I have a 2 and 4-year-old. Or at 6:00, I can be down on myself and be like, where the hell did the day go? And the difference is, did I open your app in the morning? He said, so nice. I pay you because my kids are not going to be 2 and 4 forever. And I want those 3 hours to have those memories. And I was like, wow, thank you. So I went to dinner with Laura. I was like, oh my God, I spoke to this guy. He was more articulate about my own company than I am. Like this whole thing, right? And she's, that's really good, Steven. That's better than anything I've come up with. So we were going to bed that night and Laura looked at me and she said, in yoga, we hear all these Sanskrit terms. Dharma, karma, satya, all these things, these concepts. She said, he described to Sukha, which is that feeling of happiness, that self-fulfillment. So what he's trying to tell you is you're not making a productivity app. The productivity is just like the tools. It's like the walkway. It's like the paving stones on the path where you're trying to get people. is that feeling of self-fulfillment, of happiness. So if you're in a creative field, it's freeing you up to have that idea where you go, this actually changes the trajectory of my company. If you're we have a lot of accountants and attorneys that work with us, and doctors that do their charting in the evenings.
Okay.
And that allows them to get through that more quickly so they have time to do what they want. So that's why we named it the Sukha Company. I bought the URL from bed in Bali, like lying next to the door going, hey, I wonder if the Sukha Company URL is available. And it is. So that's why our company's called the Happiness Company. Thank you for asking. It's a long story, but it is very revealing, probably about me and Laura and one of our really smart members.
I know that's packed full of advice as well, actually. This thing about, you know, diving into the people that you're serving. And there's plenty of situations where people that listen to this podcast and watch this podcast can get close to employees or the people they want to recruit and just talk to them and ask those silly questions, ask those simple questions.
When I had both of my tech companies that failed, right? I had one successful exit and two that failed. And it, as they always say, the ones that failed teach you more. I did this at the end of the company where I was like, I've spoken to the investors. I've told them this is a write-off. I've spoken to the team. And there's this chair that I have underneath like a big window. And I sat there with a pen of paper and a pencil, like old school, like not dictating into my phone. I wanted my hand to remember this. And I wrote down, what did I learn? And with both companies, it was listen. That was the number one thing. There were several things on there. But number one thing was listen. Exactly what you said, which is just say, Steven, close your mouth, ask a question, and listen deeply to what someone's telling you. And you're right. When it is your team, if you ask the right question and you just shut up, you don't lead the witness, it is amazing what someone will tell you about. Here is how you could get me to do my best work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's, you know, a great way of taking the pressure off yourself to feel that you have to have all the answers, but also to, dare I use a bit of a cliche word, but to empower the people you work with and the people who you're wanting to, in our instance, you know, create content with. You want to empower employees to contribute their thought to the strategy and the creativity and their role in telling their story.
I'll tell you something I learned about encouraging creativity. So I told you I went to USC in Los Angeles, right? So when I was making my segue from working part-time at IBM as a code monkey to make money for school and thinking this film thing was cool, my first job was I was working at this ad agency that did trailers.
Okay.
So we would get in movies. The two biggest clients were Warner Brothers and Buena Vista, essentially Disney, right? So we'd get in early cuts of movies from them and they'd be like, help us sell this. So I got to run the department with the writer producers, which means that movies would come in. Warner Brothers has a Julia Roberts rom-com for next summer, whatever, right? And I would choose a writer producer. Hey, Chris, remember you did that great job in the Julia Roberts thing last year? We got her next movie. Would you write a trailer? So it was the company was run by two guys who were very well respected in the industry. They were brilliant. One is still a good friend. One sadly died. So one of them, this guy Jeff, who's a very like rough and tumble kind of guy, right? He comes in my office and he says, Stevie, Bart. And I was like, yeah, Bart, the guy who's in the vault, like the runner who goes around Hollywood delivering tapes. Yeah, I've met him. He seems a nice guy. He's like, you ever given Bart a movie to write?
No.
I was like, Bart, we're talking about the same guy, like the vault rat, right? He's a Bart. And I was like, okay, for you to ask that question, I'm sure you're leading me toward you think he has some talent or skill or something. I just have a feeling about him. He's like, give him a movie. Let me know how it goes. So I was like, you're the boss. You've been doing this for 20 years. Who am I to doubt you? So I found like a Warner Brothers B title that had a month deadline. So if he came back after a week and couldn't do it, we could give it to a pro, right?
Right.
So I give this to him. 2 days later, Jeff comes to my office. Stevie, how's Bart doing? I was like, I just gave him the movie. I'm not going to stress him out and check with him every hour. He's like, okay, fair enough. What else did you give him? Jeff, he's never written a trailer before. Like I gave him one movie. He's like, Stevie, let me teach you something about creativity. Okay? He said, it's always about the other thing. He said, if you give Bart one movie to look at, he's going to stare at the little screen on his laptop. He's going to have beads of sweat coming down from his little temples, and he's going to write the most obvious, awful thing ever.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. Yeah.
The part of your brain that comes up with that weird, oh, I don't know, chocolate and peanut butter. What if they were together? It is not the part you think you're focused on.
Mm.
If you don't give him another movie to think about, he's never going to have the great weird idea on this movie that makes it a great trailer.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
give him another movie. And I tell you, in 20 years of film and in tech, I've seen that thing proven so many times, but I was lucky to learn that lesson when I was 20 when Jeff came to my office and said, give the Vault Rat 2 movies. Trust me on this one. And there is a lot of neuroscience behind this. If you've read The Net and the Butterfly, which is a book by Olivia Fox and Judah Pollock, they talk about the neuroscience behind this of the executive and default mode networks, where as you grow up, you do have this executive mode that executes action. I need to finish my homework by Tuesday morning. Oh, the slide deck needs to be done by Friday, right? I have to
Yeah.
do the dishes. And you have that default mode network, which is like the baby, which is the one that goes, oh, what if I put this mouse in my mouth? How would that taste? What does chocolate look like? And if you don't have the executive mode network busy with something, then it supervises or oversees the creative part, which is why so many people, including myself, are like, I had that great idea in the shower. I had that great idea
Yeah.
when I was doing dishes, when I was
100%.
driving, when I was
Mm.
walking. And it's a fantastic book, if anyone hasn't read it, that talks about how to
Mm.
cultivate this in your team to say, don't just say, hey guys, let's go have the great idea right now. We're going to sit in a room and stare at each other for an hour and have the great idea.
It's true.
It's about the other thing. That's how you get
Mm.
that weird. What if our company made the first chocolate peanut butter cup? Has anyone put chocolate peanut butter together?
Yeah. That's actually so. Jason, I never get the pronunciation right. Fried or Fried, the founder of Basecamp, one of the kind of OGs of project management software, more than project management, but you know what I mean. And he did that TED talk, one of my favorites, which he was saying from extensive research and conversations that him and his company had, that they found out the best time and place to work was not between 9 and 5 at your desk. So has always
Yes.
really stayed with me in terms of, finding the right space to be able to do something. Like this morning, I ran an event in Spitalfields in East London, intentionally a creative space, lots of plants, kind of 1960s furniture, quite eclectic, slightly Mad Men, slightly Austin Powers, number two,
Oh, very cool. Wow.
orange
Okay.
seats, that kind of thing. But as soon as I went in there, it was like, boom, my kind of creativity sparked massively. Just being in a different environment made such a difference. But there's that thing about intent and productivity being kind of connected with volume of work. And I think that's the challenge that people face, is that actually you need to be able to create that environment for you to be creative. So you're going to say something.
Yeah. What you just said encapsulated a really big idea, which I'd love to
Yeah,
unpack a bit,
yeah,
because I
go on.
imagine that's why your listeners are here to really dig into these things.
Yeah, go
What you
on.
just said, to create a space in which this kind of creative thing happens or is more predisposed to happen, right?
Mm,
That is a lot of how I've spent my life. Now, I'll tell you, in film, it is an interesting analog to what we're going through now, because in film, no one really talks about like remote work, hybrid work. Those terms aren't used in film, even though for 100 years, every film begins remote. It's writers writing alone in their homes or in their parent or their
it's
partner's
true.
homes or in
Yeah,
coffee shops, right? It
yeah.
becomes hybrid when you get a little bit of money. Some producer says, let's set up a little production office. Let's meet with a location scout and a customer 1 or 2 days a week. And then you go home and write. And
Mm,
then suddenly it's $100,000 a day. You're on set all day, all night with everybody,
yeah,
right? In
yeah.
office. And then it goes back to hybrid with picture editors, sound editors, Foley artists working, and it's finally remote. So that entire
Mm,
spectrum happens in a field that everyone associates with great creativity. Oh my God, who could have dreamed up this movie, this TV series, this thing,
yeah.
right? But it is established in each of those eras, which you may in film call them pre-production or writing. You wouldn't call them like distributed work and asynchronous work and remote.
Yeah,
In
true.
each of those, there are established ways in which you as an individual contributor, which in film may be a writer or costumer, production designer, or you as a leader, which may be as a producer or a director or a
Mm,
studio executive overseeing it. You know how to manage that era, that stage of the production.
mm,
For 100 years, this has been done. It's not novel there, right?
mm.
When for most of us, Zoom became a verb like 4 or 5 years ago, that
Yeah,
was a tectonic shift, but
yeah.
it's not actually in the world. It's only in some industries. So
Mm,
let's unpack what you said about how do you create spaces, both physical and spiritual and mental,
Yeah.
that encourage creativity. If you're running a business where you're like, I need to find the great ideas, I need to either mine them from my team and give people the opportunity to find the diamonds in the side of the mine,
Mm.
or we're going to make them. Like, you need to understand that. So I'm going to give you a couple examples of very concrete things that I saw over and over. You talked about, oh, I walked into the space that had sort of an Austin Powers kind of vibe and it was creative and plants, right?
Mm.
So when I was a young tad, right, I was on Independence Day. That was a huge
Oh,
breakthrough for me in
brilliant.
my early 20s, where just happened to be there, work hard, really got along well with the director and producer. We ended up starting a company together, which is my first successful exit, which was we created this company, right? When they were going off to write, they had a writing habit of going to this beautiful, I've never been there, but I heard about it, this beautiful white villa in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. And they talked
Brilliant.
about
Okay.
there was a room where they wrote, where in the morning the light came in over the pool, and it was just like it inspired them this creative space. So they wrote Stargate and previous movies there. When they were going to write, Roland, who's German, told his assistant, Joey, go rent the place. Blah, blah. Joey comes back on Friday. It was like an Airbnb or something, right? It's already rented. And it was like this hue and cry around the office of what are we going to do? That's our space. Roland called his attorney, John Deemer, his entertainment attorney. It was like, John, you must buy the house. John that weekend bought the house in Puerto Vallarta. I do not know what happened to the current renters. I'm sure they were paid to move somewhere else very
Yes.
quickly. And Monday, Roland and Dean went down there, and 6 weeks later, we had the script for the third highest grossing movie in history.
Brilliant.
Because they understood that they had trained their brains. That was the space where they were able to do this. Now, it doesn't
Mm.
have to be something like that. Like when I worked with Roland, Alex and Bob, who wrote Transformers 1 and 2, Mission Impossible 3, Star Trek 11, like all this stuff,
Yeah.
they had met in college. Their memory and their training of their creative space was very different than this beautiful $5 million villa in the hills of Puerto Vallarta, right?
Mm.
They would have their assistant. When there was a crunch time, it's like, we have to finish Transformers 8, whatever they're on now. They would go across the street from DreamWorks, from Universal, and rent a room at the Universal Hilton, which I'm just going to tell you is not a luxury property. But I think for them, that experience of one of them sitting on the edge of the bed, the other one at a little desk, it evoked that dorm room feel of, hey, we're these scrappy young guys, and this is how we're going to create our careers. Even though they were multi-million-dollar writers, it got them to that place where they could go write the thing that would get Steven Spielberg to direct the movie, that would get Michael Bay to direct the movie. So I tell you these funny anecdotes because I hope they stick with people to say, if you have teams and you want to create an association in their brain, spiritually and mentally, with this is where we do something, be very intentional about that. Like,
Mm.
I noticed this when I started working from home. I worked from all over my place. I'd make
Yeah.
breakfast in the
Same.
kitchen in the morning. I'd work at my kitchen table in the morning. Then I'd work up here in my office. And then later in the day, I'd be like, oh, the sofa looks comfortable. And I'd use my laptop on my lap. Sit on this.
Mm.
It was a terrible thing because my brain was not sure what I was doing. And I became much more intentional about, hey, I'm back from the gym. I'm going to sit here. This is the time I'm going to code. This is the time I'm going to do Zooms with friends like you. And then this is when I'm going to wrap up and go do something like creative. Like, I need to get over this block. I'm going to go walk around the neighborhood. I want to go see trees. I want to go dodge cars. I want to do something that distracts my executive mode network and gets me to that place. Oh, here's this. So I hope that's helpful in terms of the intentionality around space.
Absolutely. And, it reminds me of, so Gavin and Stacey in the UK, a absolutely massive British sitcom, James Corden and Ruth Jones. And there was the final episode came out on Christmas Day, but then soon after they did a documentary. And often you'd see like Ruth Jones and James Corden like lying in a bed in a hotel room, kind of just like trying to figure it out. Or one of the famous phrases came from them going to I think it was a curry house in Cardiff, and but the thing is, like, it doesn't have to be a Hollywood movie. It doesn't have to be a British sitcom classic to use these techniques. So that literally that thing about going, let's go somewhere, to actually have this space as a place to get away. It's a bit like today going to a space in London, which is so far removed from being an office space, that actually straight away, like it happened to me, brilliant. This is a space where I can get energized and do some great thinking. It'd be good to talk about the app and kind of and how it helps people. And I thought what will come from that is some tips in terms of how people can be more intentional with their time and their space. So tell us a bit more about the app then.
Let me work backwards from real problems that I have. And then once I realized how universal these were, it allowed me to engineer kind of solutions for them. So
Yeah, nice. Yeah.
there are two problems that I have. And one of them is what I call the cold start problem, which is I may agree with myself, I'm going to start work tomorrow at 8:30, 9, whatever time it is, right? And I sit down and I find I burn like half an hour before I actually start. And it may be I look at my task list and I need to return emails, so I do that quickly, or I pick up my phone for a moment, I scroll, or it could be that thing working from home where you're like, I'll just throw a load of laundry in, and then that will be going while I work, and it's like multitasking, right? I need to do those dishes from last night or something. The bottom line is it's procrastination, capital P, procrastination. That's what I do.
Mm.
And once I dug down on it myself, again, read a bunch about this and talked to a ton of our members, I realized how common this was, and it boils down to two things. There's some smaller ones, but two big things. It is either I look at my task list and I say, there's so many things in here, I'm almost paralyzed. I don't even know where to begin. There's 17 things I need to get done. It's insurmountable. Or there's something on the task list that is so big that I'm like, how will I ever do that today? Oh, write the book. Come up with the new spring advertising campaign. Really? Between now and 11 a.m. Zoom, I'm going to do that? And those two things stopped me. So I thought of very simple solutions, obviously, drawn upon a lot of productivity writing of Cal and Nir and these guys, which is number one, to help with the overwhelm, we instituted a very simple thing in our platform. We have a website that you can use. Again, it's 7-day free trial. Anyone can try it. And when you start, there's a smart assistant that helps you pick 3 things. So you may have 17 things on your to-do list, right?
Yeah,
Your
nice.
smart assistant says, what's really the top priority? How do we get these done? How much time do we need? And then as you work, you can only see those 3 things. And I'll tell you this, when we instituted this, people have now, our members have a 77% better chance of finishing 3 things than if they can see their whole list and they would finish 2.
Yeah.
Exact same amount of work, exact same tasks. It's just the thing of like, when you see 3, you're like, oh, I can probably get that done. It just helps your brain not get overwhelmed. And the second thing is the assistant will stop you. It's like, Chris, I see one of your tasks is write the book, which sounds a little big for today because I know I see your calendar. You have a meeting in 2 hours, right? So it will say to you, hey, what if we make today's goal in this little session outline chapter 3? Is that doable? And that's when you have the moment of, when I was driving yesterday, I did have that idea for chapter 3. I could probably jot that down in 30 minutes. And that feeling of starting to get things done, that momentum carries you through your day. That is how you get to the 3 p.m. of, I feel great, I'm contributing to my team, I'm crushing it, as opposed to the 6 p.m., where did the day go? I suck. I'll get up early tomorrow and try and get stuff done that I didn't do today, which is really, for me, the second problem, which is I've had those 6 p.m.s where I lie to myself and I'm like, okay, tomorrow I'm just going to get up early and finish this before I do tomorrow's work. And it's really just dominoes. It's really just one day goes into the next and you get behind. And that was really a function of distraction during the day. So that's why with our smart assistant, all I needed was a little smart assistant that said, hey, you picked up your phone while you're working. Do you really need to make that choice? And like you said, with intention, I can say, oh, thank you for the nudge. I don't need to pick up my phone right now. I was doing it out of boredom or out of frustration or something like that. Let me finish because I'd rather get to 3 p.m. I'm a hero than 6 p.m. I suck.
Yeah, absolutely.
Same if you open YouTube or something like that. Your assistant can just nudge you and be like, hey, Chris, do you really need to be in YouTube right now? And you can choose. Maybe you do. And you say, no, assistant, I'm good. But if you have that little moment of saying, who do I want to be? Do I want to be the 3 p.m. guy or the 6 p.m. girl? It's really helpful. So those are the kind of tools that we built in there to just help people. And there's beautiful focus music. A lot of research has been done. Usually, have we talked about flow states? Have you talked about flow states? So this is a term that Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, a name I practiced a lot to say properly, he coined it with a book called Flow. And essentially what his thesis was is it seems like high performers get into this highly concentrated state where they do the things that we all marvel at. How is it that they describe it in such a similar way? What is this? So he did a bunch of this research, and it's true. Many people have different words. Michael Jordan calls it in the zone. He's like, when I'm in the zone, he has that famous quote about, it's just me and the ball. There are no stands, no defenders. When I'm in that place, it's just me and the ball. And I think there's a great, I always mangle it, but a great Picasso quote about, yeah, last night I forgot to go to sleep, forgot to eat, and I don't think I went to the bathroom. But hey, look what I created.
Yeah.
And he studied that and he said, you know what? It is so interesting that there are some common elements to these states. And he called his book Flow because he said, it seems at a certain point, when you're in this highly concentrated state, it almost becomes that the consciousness like carries you forward the way a river does. So you can paddle, but in addition to your own paddling, there is the force of the river that is bringing you to your goal. And I experienced this the first time on a flight. I was flying from Austin to San Francisco. I had some designs to do, and we took off, and then we landed. And I was like, "What happened?" Like the plane clearly, we landed in Dallas or something. There's some emergency, and I looked down. 2 hours and 40 minutes had gone by. I had no concept of that. I hadn't gone to the bathroom. I hadn't fidgeted. I don't even know if the drink cart came by. But when I landed,
I know what you mean. Yeah.
I could go because there's a great little lobster. I love New England lobster rolls, Connecticut style. There's a great lobster roll place right by San Francisco Airport. And I thought to myself, I can actually go there and be relaxed as opposed to hustle to the hotel room to try and finish the designs because tomorrow I'm meeting with the team to do the thing. It was just like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna go for a lobster roll and actually sit out in the sun this afternoon. It was a really nice feeling. And then when you read again, the smart people, they're like, yes, we know how to bottle this. We know how to make this. There are some conditions precedent that help you get into that. So this brings us back to flow music. There's a lot of research that somewhere around 60 to 90 beats per minute, certain key signatures, non-vocal ambient rhythmic music helps you get in. We all have the friend that listens to death metal and that's how they get into flow. They're the outliers. Everyone's got their weird thing, right? But for most people, so we have 1,000 hours of that. Obviously, I have a bunch of friends who are film composers. So we have 1,000 hours of like up tempo, down tempo. We also had a number of members that asked for soundscapes from nature.
Yeah, nice.
So that was something that he had written about and we incorporated, which is one of our sound engineers was in the Himalayas in Kathmandu and said it was raining and I just recorded 2 hours of rain. We just made that a playlist. You could choose Himalayan Dream Rain and just listen to the rain in Himalayas. Same thing, we have a Japanese stream. We have the sound of surf in Cyprus. Birds by Emerald Lake. One of my teammates lives up near Banff, Victoria, British Columbia, and there's this beautiful lake up there. If you want to listen to 2 hours of birds by the lake, you can do that if that's your jam. That's to answer your question. That's a lot of what we try to do is say, how do we take these problems like cold start in the morning is hard, the 6 p.m., I didn't finish, I got to do it tomorrow, and say, there are smart tools we can give people for a couple cents a day that let you get over that. And whether it's you as an individual contributor or you as the leader of a team of individual contributors, we wanted to make it simply a beautiful experience because I deeply believe that in us, we have something great. It's just a question of will it come out in this lifetime?
Absolutely true. I keep very close and I've tried most task management there, and I think there are very few that enable you to literally that simplicity of picking three. There's something about priorities, and there is software that does that. But I like the clarity you give, in your platform. When you talk about flights, I'm exactly the same. Like literally, well, flying back from Bucharest last week, and
you travel a lot.
I don't. I just looks like that. But
Okay.
looking out the window, beautiful, deep blue sky, and I was listening to lo-fi music. So I was like, I'm going to film this for 2 minutes, and I'm going to take some music and just put it together, and then put it onto LinkedIn use LinkedIn in the most productive way. Just listen to this for 2 minutes, just to get into your state of whatever.
Yeah,
But
great.
I call it airplane mode. I want to get into airplane mode as much as possible because I find using my phone or my tablet That's one of my most productive places. You literally right, you land and you go, where has the time gone? It's great.
Completely. And you call
Mm.
it airplane mode. Michael Jordan calls it the zone. A lot of athletes call it the zone. Everyone has their word for it. The high performers know there's the state I get into where I do the things that move my life or the life of those around me forward.
Mm.
And that's what I want people to be able to
Okay.
access.
Look, I mean, it's great conversation. I think, we might have to have another one in the future, but I think let's
Chris,
kind of,
anytime. Call me. I'm
yeah.
around whenever you need me.
Let's finish off. I think with, you've touched on some of these things already, but in terms of like, absolutely, I love the fact you offer trial, make sure that people can access the app as well. But also this thing about what advice, technology or not, would you give people? Maybe it's like one, two, or three things
You know
that
what?
people need to bear in mind to get into that flow, to kind of
Great
develop that
question.
space.
And I will answer it with the one most important thing that I've found in this regard, which is flow. And Cal Newport has written about this with the difference between shallow work and deep work. Mihai has written about this in flow. But flow does not happen in 5-minute increments. It doesn't happen in the 27 minutes between this Zoom and our next Zoom. It is something that you have to allocate time to say, you know what, for me to get into the state and actually do the things that move us forward, I need to block out time. And I'll tell you, in my company, we came up with our own internal rule, which is from 9 to noon, we don't set meetings. We don't
Nice, brilliant.
expect each other to be responsive
Yeah, lovely.
because I think Near and Cal have written about it takes 17 to 22 minutes when you've been interrupted from flow to get back into flow.
100%.
Just, yeah. And so for that reason, if you are a leader, if you are an IC, and you say, I believe this is real and I want to get into that state and do my deep work each day, block out time. For example, in Sukha, on our platform, Slack was a big distraction. People were like, hey, Chris, could you send me that thing from last
Yeah,
night?
my goodness.
So we built a simple thing. When you hit play in Sukha, it goes to your Slack and it marks you as away. And if anyone hovers over you, it says, Chris is in a flow session. He'll get back to you. And that way,
Lovely.
their expectation is, oh, he's doing the important work. You know what? I'm not waiting here for his response. I'll hear back from him in an hour and a half or whatever. And it gives you that little like air cover to actually think and not be like, oh, let me check my Slack all the time. What if Steven needs something? No,
Yeah.
Steven knows I'm in flow and this is the time blocked out in my calendar. And that would be, if there were one thing that I could give, and this is free, you don't need any, you need a calendar. Use your Google Calendar and just say, you know what? From 9 to 11 in the morning, it's when I do my deep work. It's when I'm writing the thing, creating the thing, brainstorming the thing that is going to move us forward. Do that.
Absolutely. I'm like high-fiving you. That's so true. I love that. I
Across the
think
ocean.
it's like, and that is not saying it's easy to install as a routine, but it's the things that you can do to try out and test it. And I love that, I love that approach, definitely. And I think that's something that people can do tomorrow. They can do next week and go, look, let's chunk out a time in our diaries. We know that generally it varies on people, but generally the mornings is the time when you're at your most,
Yes.
creative, and it's for your deep work. So definitely advise people to do it. And actually, I definitely advise people to jump to the link somewhere near this episode, download the app, and give it a go, because and actually I'm gonna have a bit of a play around with it as well. I think actually this is a good opportunity maybe to do a follow-up where you can kind of hold me to task and go, Chris, so tell me how it's gone for you.
You know what?
But
I would love to get your
really
feedback.
good tips.
And it would be wonderful to get your thoughts because as we talked about a few moments ago, I'm learning to listen. So if you have things to share that will help me on my journey, I want to be receptive to that. Thank you. That is a
And
gift.
also, I like, we're all trying to figure out how to work in ways that are going to make us happy and make us productive, and make us satisfied with the days we have, doing our work. So I'm keen to kind of share that with my listeners and my viewers, because by doing this, by experimentation and sharing that, other people get to learn as well, and also getting other people's tips as well. So I would encourage people to try out the app as well. Tell them, tell me about their techniques, and then we can all put that together and maybe get another episode in, later on this
That'd
year.
be
I'd love
amazing.
to.
And I would love to hear that people are finding that time. Is I just got back from my baby moon. I'm going to be a dad this
Yes.
year. So that thought of how do I have an intentionally designed life to spend time with my kids and not be like, Dad worked when I was little, but more, yeah, I love my dad. He was there.
Mm.
That is a very germane sort of thought process for me now. And it's not it's not a coincidence that this is what I've created because I want to
Mm.
create that space for myself and for others. So I can't wait to meet my little son and my little daughter and
Mm.
have memories with them.
Mate, look, what a way to finish it, I think. Great advice. It's great to hear kind of how you got to this point as well. And
I
very
feel very
excited to hear
fortunate.
about your new arrivals as well. So thank you very much. And
Chris?
anyone jump into the link near this episode.
Mhm.
We'll also be tagging on LinkedIn. So look, let's see as they continue the conversation, but let's definitely share all of our journeys in terms of how to be in that state where we finish our day, finish our week at work and have this big smile on our face. So thanks very much, Stephen. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys for listening.